Okay, what is going on? Welcome back to the second episode of this High Seas Hacker devlog series that I've just started. For those of you who don't know what this is, or this is your first episode, I recommend going back to the previous video that I filmed, which will give kind of a general overview of the project. In this episode, we're going to do some more project planning, lay out some sprints and a roadmap, and then we're hopefully going to write our first lines of code. So with that, let's go ahead and get into the episode. Okay, so first things first, I want to take you guys through the MVP milestones that I've kind of drafted up and what we're actually trying to achieve with the project. For game mechanics, we're trying to get basic 2D movement set up, as well as earning and trading implemented, networked multiplayers. Nothing too advanced, not even going to implement chat or anything like that yet, just have the networking there. And then a simple dialogue with some of the NPC characters. For the challenges, I'm only going to host one challenge. The reason for this is hosting the challenges and all of that I personally feel, and again, this might be ignorance is bliss, but I think that that's going to be the easiest part. Then after that, we're going to build out a website. It's going to be a very basic site, probably just one home page, and then hosting this HTML5 game in another tab. And then finally, with the marketing plan, I'm going to be trying to post 1 to 2 devlogs a week. And then in addition to that, another blog post a week. The blog posts are going to be kind of tangentially related. So they're going to be security stuff, industry, exploits, news, whatever, just things that are related to security in hopes to drive people to my social medias. And then from there, find out about this project and hopefully start following it. So kind of trying to build that funnel to try and bring more viewers in and eventually direct them to this project and bring them into the community. So I'm going to be following a pretty simple agile system where I'm doing 2-week sprints. I've gone ahead and divided up a few tasks based on labels and things that I really want to get out ahead on. So we got some basic front-end development. I'm going to be using Phaser 3 for the HTML5 game. So building and working with an example project and then transferring that into my own character movement. And then in addition to that, getting the basic client server set up. So working with Socket.io, having 2 separate code bases, one for server, one for client, and getting that initial communication. And then start with some concept art. So I'm going to build all of the proof of concept on probably prepaid assets or just really basic pixel art, but I also want to start thinking about the art style I'd like. And then in addition, those 2 marketing things I talked about, publishing this devlog that you're watching right now, and then hopefully also standing up a blog post in that time. Okay, so the last thing that I want to talk about before we get into the actual coding aspect is kind of the tech stack and the architecture. For the front end, I'm going to be using Phaser. I've never personally used Phaser, but it came highly recommended when it comes to HTML5 games. I know that I could be using Unity or Unreal or something like that. But for me, I also want to be kind of working on my JavaScript skills and my web development skills in addition to building this game. I'll be able to translate a lot more of my pre-existing coding knowledge and not have to worry about working with the user interface or trying to work within the engine itself. For the backend, I'm going to be using Node.js. That's going to allow me to leverage WebSockets, and WebSockets are going to give us a better real-time communication between client and server. It's going to be much faster than something like HTTP requests, and that's going to let the multiplayer networking aspect be really reactive. And then once we start to scale out, as I kind of started to hint at in the last video, we're going to put that behind a load balancer and allow for dynamic scaling of the servers and really be able to try and handle lots of traffic after we've proved the concept. As I said, I've never worked with Phaser, so there's going to be a pretty big steep learning curve here initially as I read through some documentation and work with some example projects and try and get my feet wet in the framework and all that it has to offer and how to leverage it. Hey, look at that. So we have the Phaser Hello World equivalent set up now. Okay, so just following kind of this example project they give you, they're using this Phaser object to create a new game. And then they have a base URL, which is actually all of their assets. and they're loading all that in, and then they're using those images to create different things. So for example, we add the sky image that ends up becoming the background here, and then they add particles and use those particles to create an emitter, and then they attach the emitter to follow the logo, which is how we get this cool bouncing effect with the particles kind of coming out the back of it. Okay, so it's been a few days now and we've made quite a bit of progress. The first thing that I really started to work on was character animations and movement. Initially, I thought I had it all figured out, and I'll cut that clip in now. So today I worked on getting animations set up. So the first thing I did was I headed to itch.io in order to download some free asset packs for a top-down 2D game. Phaser actually requires a very certain format when it comes to the sprite sheet, and it needs to have an associated JSON file. That JSON file is going to give the framework a little bit more information about the sprite, such as its height and width, and so it's going to use that information to allow us to easily generate these full animations from individual PNGs. As I went to actually refactor, it became a lot easier to do the animations if I work directly with a sprite sheet, as there's a phaser functionality to parse out sprites from a sprite sheet and then use them in a particular sequence to show that animation. In this case, we can actually import a sprite sheet. So as you see here, I'm loading this character's sprite sheet that has a bunch of different characters, each of which are 48 by 48 pixels. And so we're telling on this load that we want each sprite to be 48 by 48, which is going to parse them out correctly. Within our entity class, we're actually giving them different animations based on the frame numbers. So for example, with walk down, we're saying that is frame 0 to frame 2. Frame 0, 1, and 2. So it's going to have all three of these frames play for the walk down animation in order. So if we go to walk up, this is going to be these 3 frames, which again, counting across, you have to do all the rows, and if you do that, you'll see that those are 36 and 38. And then we're just telling it that the frame rate is 8, that's how quickly the animation is going to play. And then repeat is -1. That just means that it's going to continue to repeat over and over again until it's given a direct command to stop. And then within our home scene, we can actually load in using a new entity with passing in our scene, the location in the scene we want to load, and then the sprite sheet itself. And then finally, in our scene's main update loop or main game loop, we are going to check particularly for different key downs. And if those keys are down, we want to set the player velocity as well as the animation accordingly. Now, after playing with this for a little bit, I was still running into some issues. There was some jittery movement and the player was acting all weird. And after an embarrassingly long amount of troubleshooting, I came to find out that our config file still had gravity enabled, which was pulling the player down the screen despite the fact that we wanted to have 0 gravity. So after an elite and intricate set of tests, I think that we are probably good to check off character movement for the time being until I actually design my own character and own animations. The next entry into this devlog series will be about network programming and setting up our backend servers. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. I appreciate the support. If you have any suggestions for this series, feel free to leave a comment and let me know. I'm always looking for ways to make this more engaging and more interesting to you all. So with that, I'll see you all next time.